action planning. And I am happy to hand this over to Amanda Carrillo, and she is going to run you through the scope and sequence of the work. And just as a final friendly reminder for all of you, because it's always good to realize where we've been as it helps us where we are going.
Great. Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda. I'm a newer face to the team, if you can recognize me. And I'm just going to be going through the scope and the sequence. So next slide, please. Thanks. So just to touch back to the purpose of all of this, and that's just to support the health and well-being of our campuses. We're in this first part of this phased approach, kind of laying that vital groundwork and getting the word out, you know, to your campus community partnership about your campus community partnership and this initiative, you know, getting the word out to your campuses and communities. Next slide. Thanks. So the main parts of this initial, you know, planning phase include these learning community meetings, which allow all of us to connect with fellow grantees, as well as gain information about these upcoming deliverables and planning those out as well. It also includes, you know, these monthly webinar series, so we can all kind of get ideas on how to implement locally with this funding. And it also includes the deliverables that you guys have all been working really hard on, as well as getting the word out, promoting your campus community partnership in this initiative through, you know, events, coming up with a cool name, which hopefully everyone has a name or an idea of one. And in talking about all of this, we have some new website resources available to kind of assist you in all of these parts of phase one. Next slide, thanks. So on the website, underneath that Rise and Thrive main tab, we now have a press kit page. So everyone can access this press release template as well as a social media badge. And that can be used on social media platforms, email signatures, whatever your campus community partnership feels is most beneficial. Next slide. Thanks. We also now have the learning community meetings up on the website. So we have the agenda, slides, recording, as well as any materials we send out for everyone to read beforehand. So if you miss anything or want to touch back on anything that has been posted, that'll all be up on this Learning Communities tab under that main Rise and Thrive page. Next slide. Thanks. And a final new addition to the website is we now have these webinars up there. So we have the videos embedded. And if if you missed a webinar or you want to go back and review any of them, those are all up on the website again under that main Rise and Thrive tab. Next slide, please. Thanks. And so we're already at this third learning community meeting, and you guys have accomplished so much. Last week, you all worked on your problem of practice statements and determine outcomes of interest. And this week, we're going to be building upon those pieces and kind of transitioning into action planning. And this is such an important stage as we continue ahead. This next set of deliverables will be due mid-January, and we'll get into more details about it in a bit, but it's going to include a team form, action planning form, budget form, reflection form, and then another optional peer conference form, similar to the one you guys had for this deliverable. Next slide. Thanks. And so to kind of just touch base on where we're at for this deliverable 2 that you guys all turned in, everyone's kind of in one of these 3 boats. Either you're good to go and you'll hear from us that you're ready to move forward. Some of you will hear from us that you'll need to make some minor revisions and then resubmit that deliverable. And others will hear from us that you're going to need more major revisions and have a one-on-one meeting with our team. And we'll let you guys know if you're, where you're at. And just kind of a note that we noticed from deliverable 2, those groups that did those optional peer conferences where you meet with the other campus community partnerships and talk over the problem of practice forms and outcomes of interest, where you guys were at with those. The groups that did that had much stronger deliverables than the ones who didn't. And so just kind of all goes back to that. Our greatest resource is each other. And so leaning on each other and brainstorming, bouncing ideas off of other groups is really important. Next slide. Thanks. All right. Does anyone have any questions before we transition to the small group activity with Matt and Holly? Cool. Thanks.
Great. Welcome, everyone. I'm really glad that you're here, and I'm really amazed at how far we've come as an initiative over the last couple of months. You've worked incredibly hard, incredibly fast in the context of a pandemic, and I want to acknowledge that work and just tell you that as I got to review the problems of practice this week and look at them. I'm amazed at how far we've come and how far each one of your campus community partnerships has come as well. Holly and I are going to really work through a couple of interrelated activities, and we're essentially going to explore our campus community partnerships and the notion of boundary spanning as we look at our problems of practice. Next slide. We are going to be using the Google Drive. So here in a second, you'll see that coming through in the chat box. But this is actually going to let us all work together. We'll get to see all of the problems of practice and all of the wicked problems that came in as part of our phase 2 deliverables. Next slide. So I'm going to talk through what we're going to do with part 1. We're going to assign each of our campus community partnerships to a breakout room. That means we should have 12 of them. We've gone ahead and been able to pre-create some of them, but we'll need a little bit of patience as we get some other people assigned here in a couple of minutes. Not to worry, we will get you into a room really quickly, actually. And what you're going to see when you go to that link is a Google Sheet. And you'll see your campus community partnership name listed. You will see the wicked problem, the problem in practice, and 3 facilitation questions. And really what we want to have you do as a partnership is work to answer those questions. And as with our last learning community, one of the great things about this type of activity is that even though we are apart physically, using a Google Sheet and using this type of activity lets us actually simulate working together. You'll get to see how your fellow partnerships are answering the questions, and also get a sense of where they are with their problem of practice. We're going to take about 10 minutes to do the activity, and then we'll come on back, and then we'll move into the second part. So next slide. Next slide. There we go. The goal of this activity is really to focus on boundary spanning, and we saw a lot of this with the problems of practice that came in. The idea that we have these campus community partnerships, and this is really important. And one of the reasons we want to explore it is that the partnerships that you all have are really where the synergistic solutions are going to come. It's where the magic's going to happen. And it's also going to, we also want to help make sure that this is something that, your partnerships extend well beyond this initiative, and that we're building frameworks and capacities that you can use after this initiative to continue to address the wicked problem you chose and to address other things that emerge. So we're going to address 3 questions in the first part of our activity. The first is really, where does the community fit into the problem of practice? And for some of you, it's stated right in the problem of practice, and in others, it's more implied. But really, to think about that. The second is how you plan to incorporate your community partners into solutions you might develop to address that wicked problem and the problem of practice. And then also the idea that we have a true campus community partnership, and how do we make sure that we have our community represented as a key part of that partnership. So what we're going to do you can go ahead and click on the Google Drive link. And Amanda's going to start assigning us into our breakout rooms.
Welcome back, everyone. We hope you had a good time in there really thinking about the community part of community campus partnerships while you were in your individual breakout rooms. Now what we're going to do is move you into cross partnership breakout rooms. And we do have a debriefing guide for you. And so we'll go ahead and get that link put into the chat box. I'm going to put that in right now. There you go. And you'll see it right here. Once you are in your larger cross-campus community partnership group, you'll see that there's a debriefing guide in there. The debriefing guide has all of the directions out there for you, so you can kind of just follow along. It asks you to do a couple of things. One, review other people's responses. You probably were already doing this while you were in your breakout room. And then it asks you to reflect on them. So as a group, you can choose to reflect on one of the questions and all do it, or you can choose to pick a question that means something to you and answer it as well. Finally, we want to ask you to think about leading. And so we created as a group our 5 leadership tips. And what we'd like you to talk about is which of those leadership tips, which you can find right here, are helpful as you make sure you have this boundary spanning inclusive space to work on these wicked problems and problems of practice. So basically, as soon as you get into your room, you have everything laid out for you for your debrief. There's nothing you need to write or keep track of. This is just a conversation because we heard from you. You wanted to have these cross partnership conversations. So we provided a little structure for you. Who has the first question about the task at hand? All right, hearing nothing, we will do our best to get these breakout rooms started again. Thank you all for spending time chatting with one another and getting to know each other further and starting to deepen those cross-partnership relationships. To close out this activity, we'd like you to think about part A and part B together and type in the chat box either the answer to question A, what was valuable about this activity to you, or question B, how did our activity deepen your understanding of how to build and maintain campus and community partnerships? So it's your choice. We just like all of you to comment on how the activity landed with you. Thanks, Rebecca. We appreciate you. It is a good time for us to be vulnerable. This is hard work and it is important work. Thanks, Donna. We appreciate you chiming in and letting us know that was helpful to hear where campuses were. And we're sorry that you were in that room alone. Brittany, again, hearing how there are similarities and differences. Amanda, reviewing other people's problems of practice, just getting to know and seeing what others are working on. Monica had the opportunity to share successes and challenges. Amanda gave a nod to the similarities and differences as well. And thinking through how rural and urbans are facing different things. Angela, yet another nod to hearing struggles and successes. And there's that validation, right? That this is hard, important work, and wherever you are at your journey is where you're supposed to be. Mindy saw a common theme around wellness. And Eric, that valuable part about seeing where others are going, right? And feeling like you're not alone and normalizing. So thank you. And Aaron, again, felt it was interesting to learn more about the other partnerships and the issues. And yeah, their responses on the grids are making more sense after you share those conversations. Gillian appreciated the common issues and the problems of practice and how all those approaches can be different yet similar at the same time. And Sarah, it is helpful to know that, again, this is hard, important work. It's a challenge to all of us. And Elizabeth found some gaps that may exist in the formation of partnerships and identifying the needs of students. And you all are your most valuable resource. And remember, we have the contact sheet that is in the Google Drive. So feel free to find someone's email, maybe someone you met today or someone you're curious about their problem of practice. It may be similar to yours, and reach out to them so that you can continue developing your own practice as campus community leaders. I'm going to now hand this over to Laura Bayless, and Dr. Bayless is going to share with us the next set of deliverables and also introduce you to the Reaim Framework, the framework that we will be.
Okay, thank you so much. And are there any questions at this point before I dive into our next deliverables? Okay, feel free to chime in or put those in the chat if you think of anything. So a quick refresher on our deliverables. We know you're eager to take a look and to get started, and we'll always try to post them shortly after the learning community meeting. So those will be on the website. Check your email for an update when those are posted very soon. And then you're probably getting the hang of this now, but every deliverable will have at least 3 components. So first we have you assemble your team and document that. Then we have the core deliverable itself, which of course this time is where you're actually selecting your intervention or strategy and really making a detailed action plan to carry that out. And then we'll always do a reflection form on that. So I think I had to gloss over this a little bit last time since we were running short on time, but this is just a reminder of why we ask you to use a team approach. So as you know, it's a lot of work and it's a lot easier if you can divide that up. Of course, you do have until January 14th for this next deliverable, but we know there are holidays coming up. So really encourage you to, in the beginning, think through everything that's required, think through that team form and divide up the work and really get a diversity of thoughts, so different perspectives, help with sustainability, so having a lot of different people on board. So of course, as turnover happens, as it will, you have a lot of partners who are engaged and can be retained for doing this work and carrying out the intervention that you'll be planning. So deliverable 3, same process as before. Ask you to review everything, assemble your team, complete the team form, and then the core deliverable this time is intervention selection and action plan form. And then there's also the budget and budget justification. So those should go together well, that as you're planning what your intervention is going to be, you'll also be planning your budget and submitting that. And then of course, reflecting on those deliverables. And then we do have an optional, or I think we've renamed it this time as a strongly encouraged deliverable, which again is the peer conference. So as we mentioned, it looked like that was really helpful for those who chose to participate last time. So strongly encourage that. If you didn't do it before, it's easy. We've set up the partners for you. We've given you a different campus community partnership to meet with this time. We took some of your feedback and we're matching by university size. So hopefully that's helpful, and just to talk to somebody different and reflect on what you're working on, ask each other questions, things like that. There's a form you fill out just reflecting on the partnership meeting if you choose to do that. So just a couple quick snapshots to give you a peek of what the deliverables look like. So taking what you did last time with your problem of practice, the next step is to figure out exactly what you're going to address, your priority population, your setting, thinking through levels of evidence, and selecting an intervention and telling us a little more about what you selected and why and how you found it. And then here is a snapshot of the budget and budget narrative that you'll complete as well. So knowing that you haven't seen this yet, but are about to, any questions at this point?
Actually, just wondering, it was referenced early in the call that we would be receiving feedback about our own specific problems and how we would need to move forward, whether we had approval to go on. When will we be receiving that so that we'll know? Yeah.
Such a good question, because I know last time we gave you the feedback before the meeting, and this time we decided to switch it up and meet first just so we could kind of show you ahead of time those 3 buckets. So you will be getting that response, let's say by the middle of next week before we all head on break. So yeah, we'll get you that, and set up those meetings if needed. Yeah, thanks so much for that question. Any others? Okay. So next I want to do a deeper dive into a couple pieces of the deliverable 3B that you'll be filling out. So we base some of this on a planning tool developed using the Reaim Planning and Evaluation Framework. And some of you might be experts on Reaim already, some may be newer. So just to make sure that we're all on the same page, I'm going to give a little brief overview of the framework so we all have some background information, and just to give you some guidance on what you'll be completing. So of course, there are many planning and evaluation or implementation science frameworks to choose from, but we'll share a few reasons why we like Reaim and why we chose it to help guide your project planning. So the Reaim framework was developed to guide the translation of research to practice, and it does that by thinking through both internal and
Laura, you froze for me.
Was there a question?
Laura, you froze for a minute. And so I think if you start over at the beginning of the slide, it would be helpful.
Okay, thank you. I'm so sorry about that. So we selected Reaim because it's developed to guide the translation of research to practice. So why we care about that is we're asking you to select an intervention to deliver that has some level of evidence behind it, and we want to make sure that it works in the real world where things are challenging when it's delivered in whatever setting you're working in. So another aspect of the framework that we like is that it emphasizes representativeness and issues related to access. So a lot of times in program evaluation, the number of people reached is reported, but we go beyond that and think about who we're reaching in terms of demographics and making sure we're reaching the population who can most benefit from the intervention. And then we also address multi-level factors. So we're looking at both effects on individuals and also how programs or interventions work in organizations and systems and communities. So we think through things like who will adopt and deliver programs or interventions and whether they'll be maintained over time. Okay, so what is it exactly? So Reaim stands for Reach, Effectiveness, Adoption, Implementation, and Maintenance. So a brief overview on each of these dimensions, just to help as you'll be going through this planning tool we've included. For reach, we're looking at, as I mentioned, number, proportion, and representativeness of who's impacted. Effectiveness, that's probably what you think of as your traditional program evaluation. So what are the core outcomes you're looking at if you're changing attitudes, behaviors, conditions? For adoption, we go to the setting level and we look at the number, proportion, and representativeness of delivery agents, which could be anything from, teachers to doctors, depending on what setting, but it's who actually is doing the work on the ground or delivering the intervention. And then we can also look at that at the organizational level. So how many clinics or schools or community organizations agree to deliver an intervention. Implementation, we're looking at fidelity and adaptations that are made, including cost to make sure it's workable in the real world. And then maintenance has two parts. One is the individual primary outcomes and whether they last over time. So if you deliver an intervention and you see some really great changes in behaviors, let's say, looking at whether those are maintained, maybe 6 months, maybe a year or more after. And then at the system level, if the system is ready and can continue delivering the intervention over time. So that was a lot. The best way, I think, to think through these, what I like to use is just really pragmatic who, what, where, how, and when questions. So here are some examples of how we can turn all that into these really pragmatic and practical questions that we can use in planning and in evaluating our interventions, depending on how we phrase them. And just a note on terminology here, I'm using intervention throughout, meaning programs, practices, principles, procedures, products, pills, or policies. So those 7 Ps. Some may apply to you, some may not. I know I haven't done anything with pills or products in my work, but just clarifying that isn't only an individual level program, but there's good examples of using Reaim for any of these intervention types. So even things at the policy and environment level, which can be really impactful. So overall, the goal of using the framework, thinking through these questions, is to deliver interventions that can be adopted, adapted, and delivered broadly, so they have a large impact, have the ability to be sustained and consistently delivered at a reasonable cost, reach large numbers of people, especially those who can most benefit, and produce long-lasting changes. So here is a snapshot of the planning tool that you'll see in Deliverable 3 with some of those who, what, where, when questions. And the goal is to help you plan your intervention for maximum impact, and then also to help you plan and think a little bit about evaluation. So thinking about what you might want to measure and how you'll do it. So we've designed this to be, I think, pretty user-friendly with these questions, whether or not you've used Reaim before. But if you want more information, you love this, you want to get into it, we suggest starting with the Reaim website, which is re-aim.org. And I like to just start here with the basics. What is Reaim? And then looking through each of the dimensions if you want more information. And of course, there's much more that you can get into if you want. And then we have one other action planning table. So 2 different tables that you'll fill out as part of this deliverable. And we'll give you a little bit of background on this one as well. So with this action planning table, we're asking you to really take a detailed look at every step you'll need to take, who will do it, when it'll be done, what resources are available, what resources are needed. So our hope is that by filling out the Reaim table, you'll really think through your implementation plan and easily be able to put these steps in place here. And also that this will tie in well with your budget as you think through exactly what needs to be done and the resources that are needed. So why develop an action plan? A few reasons. Making sure the intervention that you've selected and your plan for delivering it in your setting is feasible, helping you be efficient, we all have limited time and resources. So really thinking through who does what on the front end, being accountable to carry through your plan. So exactly what you say you'll do in the beginning, to do that when you are at the process and the stage of implementing the intervention. And then I couldn't think of a way to write this in parallel, but thinking through all the details. Wanted to make sure to include this because sometimes I'm guilty of forgetting some of the little details until later on. So we want to help you avoid that and avoid any of those road bumps by working out all of even the minor details in the beginning. Okay, so what questions do you have on the deep dive into a couple pieces of the deliverable that you'll be doing? And if you need some time to think about it or reach out when you actually look at the deliverables, that's fine too. Lots of options for the drop-in hours and just contacting us whenever you need support. Okay, so if nothing else right now, we'll turn this over to Julie.
Thanks, Laura. I appreciate it. Just a few reminders about seeking support. Bye. Okay, as we've talked to you guys about before, the Rise and Thrive Initiative website, the suicideprevention.ohio.gov. You could see the prompts there on how to get to the Rise and Thrive Initiative. I do recommend that you take a look at that website if you haven't already. The team has done a really great job of putting up an overview of what we're working on, something that you can certainly share with other individuals in your organization. It is not going to show your deliverable work or others' deliverable work, but it does provide a really great overview to share. As well, there's some of those great leadership videos and always the Rise and Thrive Google Drive. If you have difficulty getting into that, you can always reach out to Amanda or myself, and we can help you develop that workaround. Next slide, please. Okay. We continue to say this, and I think the proof was in the pudding this week, but you definitely are not alone in this, and your resource is that you have each other. You guys are doing this work, right? So although we can assist you in helping you along, really those other partnerships can also commiserate, if you will, and talk to you about maybe some of the barriers they're having or some of the successes. Our drop-in calls will continue on Mondays and Thursdays, and you have those Zoom links as well. And if those timeframes don't fit into what works for you, we're always happy to do one-on-one technical assistance. You can reach out to Matt Corser, and again, if you're not sure which way to go, you can always reach out to me, and I can get you to that right person. Lastly, our work slippage form on here. Really important. We know how busy you guys are, and we hear, just within this initiative itself, the utilization rates within for your services. So we know how hard you're getting hit. Please don't hesitate or feel bad about filling out the work slippage form. That is why it's there, and we are here to help you get on track in whichever way that best suits you. Next slide, please. A reminder about our webinar series. So our next webinar is December 8th from 1:30 to 3. And to keep in mind, our webinars will always be the second Wednesday of the month. So this one in December, Better Together, Leveraging Campus Community Partnerships to Address Alcohol Harms. We will have a panel for this particular webinar, and archived webinars can be accessed on the Prevention Action Alliance website. And you can see a list of those archived webinars. If you have any question regarding those webinars, would like to see anything for future webinars, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We are putting these webinars together with you guys in mind, hopefully giving you guys some good resources, tips, ideas, initiatives out there that you could utilize as well on your own for your campus community partnerships. And next slide. Regarding CEs, so CEs for this event are available OCPS prevention and OCPC as well as CHES. And if you would like us to consider other venues, please reach out to me. If you need CEs for this learning community, whether they are prevention or CHES, can you please just send me an email? Let me know. We want to make sure that you're receiving the credit that you need for these. And again, please be sure to pay attention to those deadlines so that we can get those CEs, those certificates out in a timely basis. You'll receive the evaluation for this learning community in a follow-up email. Next slide. Questions? As always, please feel free, you guys receive a weekly email from me. Feel free to respond back if you have questions. If you have questions related to the grant deliverables specifically, you can reach out to Matt Corser or Laura. But as you know, there's always someone here to answer your questions. And if you're not getting what you need, feel free to come back to me and we'll redirect you to the right area. Next slide. Okay, before I let everyone go, I will ask you if you guys have moments where you have photos or testimonials that you want to share about the work that you're doing on your campus community partnerships right now. We'd love to see them. Please send them our way and let us know if we can share them. It's always a great way to be recognized as well as good for continued funding. So if you guys could let us know the kind of work that you're doing, reach out with any small wins. We always appreciate that. So that's what we have for you today. Thank you so much. We ended a little bit early, which is never a bad thing since we have kept you before. We appreciate your participation. We look forward to hearing from you and we'll be reaching out to you about the last set of deliverables. Have a great afternoon and a great Thanksgiving. Bye-bye now.